Atlas Construction, a grade above the rest. Builds a home in no time and their quality's the best. What they quote is what you pay, a home that you'll enjoy. Atlas Construction, Oka-Oy. Visit us on the web at atlasconstruction808.com or call us at 951-9500. Atlas Construction, Oka-Oy.
The Atlas Construction Show is on the air. Sit back, relax, and listen as 4 generations of home builders you can trust guide you through their 4-step building process that'll take the guesswork out of building your dream home. And now, here's the host of our show, Mike Buck.
Boy, oh boy, this is going to be one of those days, y'all, where we're going to try to put, like in the old days, put 50 pounds of rice in a 20-pound bag. We got a loaded show for you today. I want to welcome you back if you've been here before. I want to welcome you and say aloha and mahalo for joining us. If this is the first time you're listening to the show, you're going to need to write an implement. We're going to give you some really cool things to do. We got a free, our seminars are coming up. This is free. One is going to be at the Pearl Country Club. The other at the Blaisdell. We'll tell you about that. There's also going to be an open house coming up when you can see a proud owner willing to display the job that Atlas has done for them. Today, a couple of the initial point men, the project coordinators, are with us, as well as Rodney Kim, the VP and in charge of getting you the information you need to do what you need to do. So, first of all, let's break the ice again, Rodney, with a little bit of ADU news, because everybody's talking about these new ADU things.
Yeah, so I'm sure our listeners out there have heard last week or this past week here the news about Homeowners Associations. So if you're in a Homeowners Association, such as, a real good example is Mililani Town Association, inside of your covenants, your CCNRs, it probably states that you're not able to put a second dwelling on your property. So there's going to be some restrictions to that. The new ordinance 20 and 21 does not supersede any homeowners association. And also, I'd like to point out, Mike, that not only homeowners association, a lot of these older properties where you think that the owner HOA has dissolved, but what happens is a lot of times they put these
HOA meaning
a homeowners association.
Yeah.
So say you're like in one of the older subdivisions, like say Momilani in Pro City. I don't know for a fact, but I know like in other places, like in Kalama Valley, like I was telling you earlier, is that I saw that in the past they may have had an association that dissolved, right, over time. But what happened is there's restrictive covenants that's attached to the deed that states that you cannot put a second dwelling on your property.
But you know what I think is interesting about that? And I remember when the attorney, Dennis O'Connor, was representing a lot of people out in Hawaii Kai, this was years ago, in the lease to fee conversion. And that very subject came up saying, all right, this was a covenant of the landowner, but now I'm the landowner. So all I have to do is be responsible to the city, that these things don't necessarily carry forward. But then there's some people who says, now, wait a minute. We all bought these places with that understanding. So these are, quote, grandfathered in. You can't put a second story. You can't ruin my view plane. And you can't do this and you can't do that. But doesn't it sometimes, Rodney, become difficult to enforce, particularly because you got to hire attorneys and that costs a lot of money?
Exactly. So the interpretation of the ordinance, is very difficult because it's changed over time, the land use ordinance. And what happens is when we submit our application into the Department of Planning and Permitting, the building department, they look at it one way. The State Bureau of Conveyance, the tax office that keeps track and the history of all the titles, title transfers, and the deeds, they look at that another way, but they really don't have jurisdiction as far as the building codes, right, or the land use ordinance as far as the building code goes for the county. So there's a little bit of gray areas here.
So it's like you got to check in with about a dozen people before you can do anything to your house.
Yeah, make sure. Please, our listeners out there, make sure that of course, if you come to us, we're gonna dot our T, cross our T's and dot our I's, like my cousin always says. Nathan is not here today. But we're going to make sure we do all this research and due diligence for you.
Okay, here's where I want to make that really understood. Josh Vasconcelos and also Alan Tour here. And one of the things that you guys do, Josh, and I don't know if people really understand this, is that when you come out to my house for the initial consultation, Atlas does a little bit of road work and homework before you even come there. So you got a ballpark idea. And in all probability, you've probably worked at another place in my neighborhood anyway.
Yeah, correct, Mike. As far as for our company, and if any one of us come out there and meet with you folks, we definitely do an extensive research before we even go out there and do our first initial consultation. We have certain sites that we actually log on to, that we subscribe to, and they that's where we pull a lot of our information from. If we have to, we'll go down to building department, and even with some of these ADU questions that you were talking about earlier. We do a lot of research just to see as far as what you qualify for, how big, because even within the ADU, there's going to be certain parameters and guidelines as far as the size you can build. I know a lot of people, when this thing first came out, excuse me, they all just assumed that they were going to be able to qualify for the ADU and they could build at the max 800 square feet. But there's also a lot of other guidelines that we need to follow. So we do a lot of extensive research before we get out there, because one thing we want to do is make sure we educate people on what they can and can't do. No one wants to be wasting their time or spinning the wheels in the mud over something they can't do.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, I know this one guy who said he had already composed his Craigslist ad for his ADU. All he had to do was build the thing, but so he was counting on it because, and I guess this is rightfully so, even though we are not going to talk about this in exact parameters yet, it's safe to assume that if you are entitled to build one of these things and you build a nice unit, you can get some pretty serious money. In other words, it's a pretty crafty way. It's a pretty good investment if you can do it.
Yes, if your property allows you to do the ADU, then you do open yourself up for some opportunities as far as generating income or creating more value to your property. Because part of the big deal with the ADU is that now it doesn't have to be attached to your dwelling. It actually can be detached, and if you were to rent it out, it doesn't have to be to a family member. It actually can be to someone outside of the family.
Yeah, look at how many guys too, Alan, when you guys get out there, they want to do the wink thing. I know we're not supposed to have this, but kind of, we can put this door in later and put the stove in later. And I knew that there's a ethics question that you guys go through and all of that, but maybe you can also explain some of the other misunderstandings that a homeowner might have that you get there. And it's not that you're trying to dampen the thing or throw any water on the fire, but you just got to be able to understand that a homeowner, he may think he can do something, but that you can't just do whatever you want.
Yeah, there's definitely the guidelines and the restrictions, and then we do want to follow what the building department has set forth. And a big part of it, the way that I see it, is a lot of these rules and or building department guidelines are, one, to keep the house safe, but also to keep the keep good relations between the neighbors, right? It's making sure that whatever you're doing at your home, it's not going to be an issue for your neighbor or cause an unsightly thing for the neighborhood, or so it is important to follow that. And for us, we are sometimes looked at the bearer of bad news.
I got bad news for you. This is not a second story neighborhood,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just part of it. It's part of the business. We do let them know what they can and cannot do, and that's a big part of why we do our due diligence in the beginning, is so that we can be well informed and give you the best correct information.
Let me give you an example of that and see if this has ever happened to you or any of you guys. And that is, in my neighborhood, even though the city and county has a 25-foot height limit for residents, in my neighborhood is 15. And that everybody, there's no gun in your mouth when you sign in these things. And if you say, well, I didn't know, I bought the house, but nobody told me that, that's not true, because it's your realtor's job to make sure that you get a copy of the HOAs that Rodney was talking about. Right. But then there's still going to be people that say, you know what, just do it anyway. I know that we can get a permit. Now, is that true? Can you get a permit from the city even though the Homeowners Association doesn't say yes?
No. From my understanding is we go through, whenever you have a homeowners association, you actually have a double process where you're actually submitting to the association first to see if it does fall and satisfy all of their requirements, and that you're not doing something outside of what is allowed. And then secondly, when they give us their approval, then from there we can go ahead and then submit for the permit at the building department. Okay, now Rodney, this is the reason why we try to explain to everybody that Atlas Construction is a true design and build firm, so that you expect that those are some of the loops you guys are going to jump through. If you've got to come to the Homeowners Association with a plan, that means that you've invested time and effort and design into this thing. So by that time, a customer, you guys are carrying the heavy load for the customer.
Yeah, definitely, Mike. So what as a true design build contractor, right? We want to make sure that there's no hidden costs or no any surprises down the road as we move along through the process. Now, as my cousin was saying, that normally, like for homeowners associations such as yours, if there's a different building envelope, 15-foot height max, sometimes the Department of Planning Permitting, the building department, sometimes they know about it, sometimes they don't. But a lot of times, stuff falls through the crack, right? And what you find out is that even though they give you a permit and approve your permit, if you read between the read the fine lines, what it says is you're still responsible to abiding by any codes or zoning or homeowners association stuff like that. So what that means, right, Mike, is that you actually may be able to get a building permit, but when the site inspector comes out there, or an inspector, or for your homeowners association comes out and says, "Hey, you guys are not abiding by the code," and you say, "Well, look here, I got my green paper as my building permit."
Right.
That's regardless of anything.
I bring this up for a purpose because not too long ago in my neighborhood, one of our neighbors, even though it's around the corner, it's near enough our house, so that we understood that this guy, he put up a second story. And everybody in the whole neighborhood they were going wild, because they thought, wow, how can this guy do this? It's against the code. Well, it eventually had to be removed. And I mean, can you imagine, Josh, the amount of money that is spent to have a crew build that thing and then have to take it down?
Yeah, I'm sure it was a lot as far as it going up. There's that cost involved, and then to take it back down and now to actually repair anything that had been done to make that second floor addition. So
what they did was they went up over the garage with these new beams, metal steel beams, and they put about a 1,500 square foot second floor on this house. And everybody told them, the neighbors told them, they just said, "Hey, we got a permit and we're all fine." And so finally one of the neighbors said, "Well, really, I'm an attorney. And here, let me show you what's not fine about that. See me now or see me in court." And that's kind of ugly, right? I mean, that's certainly, you guys never get involved in something like that because you wouldn't even think about putting a hammer and a nail together unless everything was correct.
Exactly. And going back to what we were saying earlier as far as that initial research that we do, just like and what my cousin Roddy was saying, just because you got that green paper issued by building department saying you got a building permit, you really need to take it upon yourself, and that's what we do for our homeowners is really do the extra step for them and research, because you can still get that permit, but if it somehow slipped through the crack or your association has something else, other guidelines or restrictions, and you build something, that's basically what's going to be the resolution is they're going to make you repair it and go back to its original state, and you're going to be paying not just for the addition that went up, but also the removal of it, and then the repair.
Guy had gone out and got financing. He hired a contractor. The contractor came in and put the job up, and the contractor eventually, from what I understand in that particular one, the contractor went. He washed his hands. He just, I'm not going to do this. So I think that we've sort of covered a little bit, Rod, what I wanted to with regards to this ADU thing. Just before we put it to bed for the rest of this segment, let's make sure that people understand you guys dotting the I's and crossing the T's, like you said, on a really exciting proposal. On those people that are going to be able to do this, they're going to have a lot of options. We're going to have a special category at Atlas for them.
Yes, we are. So starting next month, we're going to be doing an ADU program. We are in the process right now. I think we have about 3 or 4 projects currently that are going through the process. So before we kind of open it up to the general public, we just have people that came by and we're talking about it before, and they're patient and fortunate enough to wait for this whole process to go through. So we're going through the application process. We're going through the different processes with the Department of Planning and Permitting, with the different agencies. You actually have to go with the wastewater department, the civil engineering department, and make sure that you have enough capacity on your property or your street. There's a bunch of more steps that needs to be done rather than just building a regular single-family dwelling. So we want to make sure that we go through this process a few times before we go out and say, okay, this is how it's done, So I'm sure there's going to be some, some bumps in the road. There's going to be some learning for us to go on. But we are really excited about this. From what I understand, talking to the mayor's office and also with the Department of Planning and Permitting, is we have on the island, I believe they said 20-something thousand properties that will be should be able to fit into this ADU category.
You know, that simply also means, and I do know that this is I don't want to say a last gasp effort, but a great effort on behalf of many people of the city and the state level as well, to provide housing, much needed housing and much needed inventory. But we will have to caution people that this opportunity is going to create a tremendous, temptation for some pretty bad actors to be flying around and saying they can do things. So that's why, going to a bricks and mortar design and build firm like Atlas makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, one thing is that, a lot of people, what's going to happen with this new program is that a lot of people all of a sudden are going to be landlords and are going to have tenants. So people who are not, and this is where we bring our experience also, being 4 generations in the construction and also real estate development, and being that my great grandparents came from Korea. They're buying properties and selling them and actually renting them out and being landlords. It's very different from just trying to keep up maintenance on your own home, right? Mm-hmm. Now when you have a rental property, and the guys, people who you rent to, whether they take care of it or not, but you want to make sure that you set aside everything for the maintenance costs of this project. So ideally, what you want to do and what we really strive for is a low maintenance, long lifespan home or structure. So, and we're carrying the same philosophy into this ADU program.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing that's scary about that, something that he said, and I know that maybe for Alan and Josh, this happens to you guys every now and again too, that when you're talking about a rental unit or additional income, you could pick the rental tenant from hell. I mean, all of a sudden you have a quiet, nice little neighborhood, and then some guy comes in and says, hey, you know what? I just bought my 15-year-old a drum set. So you better get used to that. He wants to be the drummer in the parade. So just so that we can get this whole ADU out of there, I just hope that people don't automatically ask you guys every time you go out to a house, Josh, hey, can I do an ADU here? Or how much is it going to cost me? Because that's the big thing. I can do this. It's going to cost me this much. I can rent it for this much. It makes a lot of financial sense if I can get away with it.
Oh yeah, and it's not that it's asked every consultation that we give. It is something, I guess, because of the news coverage and what's going on, that it has been brought up a little more than normal. But for the most part, I mean, it's just business as normal for us. It's a lot of people just doing the the new homes, addition, renovations, remodels, but there definitely is a buzz out there. Like I said, there's more people that are bringing it up, and that's why we've been trying to educate ourselves for months, preparing for just this launch, just so that we could educate a lot of these people. Because some of the people too that they ask us about, they're looking at doing a rental property, but